Hi, Steve Huh, first of many informational videos about college admissions and high school circumstances. First is grades. So today we're going to be talking about grades and what grades do to your college admissions scenario. So as it says here, grades and SAT 1 or ACT scores are the most important. So the grades and SAT 1 or ACT, the primary test score, determine a class of university that a student can get into. So everything else is tip factor. Some are more important tip factors than others, but grades and ACT or SAT 1 scores determine the category of scores. So public universities just look at the grades and scores and pretty much only a little bit lower or a little bit higher SAT 1 score or ACT and grades will determine whether you get accepted or not accepted to a public state university. To a private university, as long as you're within a range of scores or grades, you're okay. And then they'll look at the tip factors to determine whether you get in or not. So which grades then are important? So the most important grades are the 11th grade grades. They are the ones that determine how you're doing at the moment. So you're doing well, and that trend is going to continue into university, admissions officers feel. So 11th grade grades are the most important, and they'll be the most difficult in most all high schools because high schools realize that that's the scenario. So the typical fashion where students should determine what grades are going to go to university or not, especially if they've been transferring from school to school, is to look at your 11th grade grades and then count backwards 6 semesters. So after your 11th grade finish, count backwards 6 semesters. So if you transferred around and maybe ended up repeating a grade, it doesn't matter the repeat itself. It matters more that it's 6 semesters backwards. So the middle school grades won't be counted. So if you count 6 semesters backwards in a Korean high school scenario where you're going from 고3 1학기 would be equivalent to end of the 11th grade. So third year, first semester, end would be the end of the 11th grade. And if you count backwards 6 semesters, you end up going into middle school third year, second semester. Typically though, universities don't want your middle school grades. So the middle school third year, second semester grades should not be sent to universities. However, the University of California schools are an exception. They will want your middle school language grades, foreign language grades, and your math grades. So now, first the myths, 9th grade grades don't count. Or if you have rising grades, that scenario. So 9th grade grades do count. But again, as I said, the 11th grade grades are so important that it could overshadow 9th grade grades or earlier grades in being less important. So it kind of gives the feeling that 9th grade grades aren't counted or aren't counted as highly. Aren't counted at all is a myth. They aren't counted as highly as 11th grade grades, but they are counted still. So if a student raises their grades throughout their high school career from 9th grade to 11th grade and so forth, then it's good. Then it's good, and that's counted very, very well. So you have to do better in your 11th grade, of course, but that's a myth that they're not counted. So the second scenario is if you have scattered grades or bad grades throughout your career. So scattered meaning randomly scattered, that's bad. Randomly scattered among types of classes, randomly scattered among your 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. That's probably the worst scenario. Because it shows that students don't care about their commitment to learning and education in general. So if you have scattered grades, you have to talk about it in your college admissions additional information field. You have to, and case by case it'll be different, so I'm not going to say you should say this or that here, but you have to talk about it. You have to show at least that you're a good student. So if you have a mid-dip, a dip in grades in your middle, you have to talk about it too. But if you just dip from straight A's to B's, you probably don't need to talk about it. If you do talk about it, it'll make you sound like you're some kind of crazy person. So slight dip in 11th grade, that's the third scenario maybe. A slight dip in the 11th grade is somewhat common because again, 11th grade classes are much more difficult. So you'll have a lot of your AP testing or IB testing or SAT2 testing or SAT1 testing. Most of the officers in clubs are 11th and 12th graders. So slight dip in the 11th grade is fairly common. Now, the strongest candidates at the top, applying to the top universities, will have straight A's even in 11th grade too though. But it's not horribly bad. A dip into the C land is very bad though. That shows like maybe you, I don't know, we're going through adolescence too much. So weighted versus unweighted grades. Unweighted grades universities prefer because it's the clearest and easiest to understand, but of course they'll take whatever the high school gives them. However, the weighting system for all high schools are slightly different, or it can be somewhat different. So if you have weighted and unweighted grades are preferred, but again, they'll take whatever you give them or whatever the high school gives them in the transcript. So students compete by high school and then by region. So this is a little bit difficult to understand maybe, but universities have like a quota of 7% to about 12% international students. So admissions officers will take that 12%, maybe it's a number, let's say it's 10. Of course it'll be much larger than that in real life, but let's say it's 10. So they'll spread out the 10 positions throughout the world. So maybe Asia will get 2 because Asia is such a big region, and maybe some other places will get some other number of students. So, so there'll be 2 positions from Asia, and so let's multiply that by 10. So let's say 20 students from Asia. So maybe Korea might get one or two students then from Korea itself. So now the admissions officers have agreed to take only 2 students from Korea. So then it'll be by high school then. So you're competing with fellow students in your own high school. So is it Johnny or Fred? Is it Cheolsu or Minsu? Is it Samsuni or Hee-Jung-i? Okay, so in that scenario then, a top scoring university, a top flight university will not take a student in the middle of the class ranking. They'll take them from the top of the class ranking. So students should try to compete to become the highest ranked. But again, private universities won't look at just grades and just SAT1 scores. They'll look at a range of SAT1 scores and a range of grades. Top schools will look at a very narrow range, but a range still. And then they'll look at the other TIF factors. Public universities will look at a very specific cut line of grades and very, very specific cut line of SAT1 or ACT scores. So best grade first, then which classes should you take? The reason for that is the best grades are more important because, again, grades and ACT or SAT1 scores are the determining factor of what category of university you can apply to. But what classes you took are a TIF factor. AP or honors classes are a TIF factor. Now, for a top university, if you don't take AP courses or honors courses, it's very, very bad because so many students applying to those universities are in the AP or honors classes. But otherwise, for most all other universities, the best grade is much, much better. So if you don't think you can get A in an AP or honors class, taking a regular track class is better. If you can get a B at least, or B plus, AP and honors is fine. But if you're thinking maybe getting a flat B or a B minus, take a regular standard level class instead. So transferring high schools. Transferring high schools, the rule of thumb is that most high schools will show in their own, your most current high school will show all of your past high schools, if you transferred from place to place, all of your past high school's grades in their own transcript. Now, some universities do want transcripts from every high school that you've ever attended directly. Like Michigan State University and Penn State want transcripts from every university directly. University of California schools want transcripts from every high school directly. But the current school in the 11th and 12th grade will have all the grades in their own transcript form field represented. So gaps in the transcript are then very, very bad. So for instance, gaps in grades or gaps in the transcript is bad because, and it happens because maybe students get a student visa in the middle of their semester. And so they're all eager to leave and go into the high school, which is a bad idea. Now, I realize that Korean high schools, for instance, finish their year in the middle of July, which would be, you know, a month or two into summer vacation for most high schools. So I do understand that students want to, you know, sort of don't have just a month, but more like 2 or 3 months. But you must go to that high school. So if you get a visa and you don't want to stay until mid-July to get your final grades, this is less good, but I recommend that you go to your high school and attend at least a week or two, or a month or two is better, but a week or two even, and they'll give you a pass or fail or some kind of, you know, like they'll have some system in place to represent your classes for that semester, even though you only took 2 weeks of it. So you must avoid gaps in your grades at all costs. It'll lower your possibility of university admissions by about 20 rank positions, which is huge. So no gaps in grades. So that brings us to a close to our discussion about grades for college admissions. Okay? So tune into more videos as I shoot them, and we'll upload them. And tune into those other information topically for information about various other topics in college admissions. Thank you very much.